Welcome everyone to the 2024 New York City Greenways Summit. Thank you. I am Hunter Armstrong, co-chair of the New York City Greenways Coalition and executive director of Brooklyn Greenway Initiative. The coalition is a group of over 45 organizations from across New York City who have come together to build awareness and use of greenways, to advocate for more greenways in overlooked neighborhoods, and for better design of greenways and better maintenance. We represent organizations small and large, and you'll be hearing from many coalition members over the next 2 days. And if you're a coalition member, please stand up. All right. Round of applause. And if you are a steering committee member, remain standing and raise your hands. All right, great. Mundo Chauncey. So I'd like to recognize and thank my Brooklyn Greenway Initiative colleagues, the Summit volunteers, and my fellow steering committee members for helping run the coalition and organize this summit. Coalition co-chair Chauncey Young with the Harlem River Working Group, Laura Shepard with Transportation Alternatives, Daniel Abram, New Yorkers for Parks, Edmundo Martinez, Bronx activist and Bronx River Alliance volunteer, John Orcutt with Bike New York, walking in right now, and Brian Hedden with Brooklyn Greenway Initiative. The Greenways Coalition was started in 2021 with a call to bring more federal funds for greenways in New York City. And in 2022, we organized the first New York City Greenways Summit in this very room. Work by the coalition and our partners in city government at that time resulted in successes, including New York City legislation for New York City agencies to create an updated citywide greenways plan for New York City. The last citywide greenways plan dates back to the early 90s during the Dinkins administration. The coalition also heartily supported the city's effort to secure $7.5 million in federal funding for greenways planning. And you're going to be hearing a lot more about the citywide greenways plan and individual corridor planning supported by the federal grant over the course of today and tomorrow. Because of all the momentum that we have in the Greenway movement in 2024, we've declared 2024 the Year of Greenways. And we are delighted to convene so many Greenway allies here and online to learn more about, to discuss, to get motivated and engage more people in greenways and get more greenways planned and built. We're glad to have so many partners in government here, including hardworking and talented greenway planners and implementers from New York City Department of Transportation, New York City Parks, New York City Economic Development Corporation, who will all be presenting updates throughout the course of today and tomorrow. Any New York City or New York State employee who is here, please stand up and be recognized, and let's give them a round of applause. All right. Thank you. We believe greenways are critical infrastructure to address New York City's pressing social, environmental, transportation, and economic issues. Expansion and better design and maintenance of our citywide greenway network will dramatically increase the city's ability to equitably deliver affordable and green mobility options, to create open space and environmental benefits, to improve public health and social cohesion, and to enhance safe access to jobs and economic development to more New Yorkers. We know that the public will understand, use, and support greenways if they have a well-marked, well-mapped, well-publicized, well-designed, well-maintained, safe, and enjoyable experience. That's what they care about. But those of us here at the summit know that a cohesive, safe, enjoyable experience takes planning, collaboration, and hard work. At their best, greenways can span many communities, link diverse destinations like parks and job centers, span different jurisdictions, including streets and parks. All of us here at the summit are here to address these issues and make progress on getting greenways built in New York City. Over the course of the next 2 days, you'll be hearing from agency commissioners, Adonis Rodriguez, Sue Donahue, and directly after me, Andrew Kimball, about how greenways fit into DOT, New York City Parks, and Economic Development Corporation goals, and how the agencies are making progress on those goals. Next, we'll hear from the Greenway practitioners and planners at those agencies about how they're implementing those goals and how they are working together. We'll hear about how New York State can advance Greenway work here in New York City with discussion from Assemblywoman Emily Gallagher, and get lessons on how other East Coast cities are getting greenways built. Later this afternoon, we'll hear from environmental justice organizations, South Bronx Unite, Staten Island Urban Center, and We Act for Environmental Justice, who are working to advance greenways and discuss how greenways advance environmental justice goals and improve communities. Tonight, we hope you'll join us at GMT Tavern, which is just 1 block south of here, to hear from New York City Council member Shekhar Krishnan, chair of City Council's Parks Committee, about his work on greenways. We hope you'll come to meet Councilmember Krishnan and have a drink and hang out with your fellow Greenway allies at this reception sponsored by AECOM. Tomorrow, we will be at a different location. I'll say that again. Tomorrow, we will be at a different location, Transit Center on Whitehall Street, close to the Staten Island Ferry Terminal. We'll be starting the day hearing from DOT Commissioner Adonis Rodriguez, and then present brand new information from a groundbreaking study by Brooklyn Greenway Initiative, Regional Plan Association, Numina, and DOT, with in-depth information about who is using the 29-mile Brooklyn Waterfront Greenway, with user interviews, demographics, and usage counts. This will be information, valuable information to all of us as we advance our Year of Greenways agenda. Next, tomorrow, we'll hear from experts on how to turn planning into action and get greenways built. And we hope you'll join us then for a bike tour of the proposed North Shore of Staten Island Greenway, led by Rose from Transportation Alternatives. The fun doesn't end there. Check the greenways.nyc website for tours this weekend of current and future Greenway corridors. These have been organized by Greenways Coalition members. Please pick up a Coalition t-shirt to wear for this weekend's events and other future Greenway activities. For everyone attending in person, we'll have opportunities for questions from you for each of our speakers and panels. Since we have a very packed schedule, we'll be taking questions for speakers via note card, and everyone has note cards on your chair. So when you have a question to share, just hold up your note card, and one of our volunteers will pick them up and give them to the panel. Over the next 2 days, we'll be discussing how to build greenways to advance equity, to improve mobility, to improve the environment and climate, to improve communities, placemaking, and the public realm, to improve the health of New Yorkers, to provide jobs and economic development, and not least, to make life in New York even more fun. We hope you'll add comments to our posters out in the hallway here about how to advance design and build greenways to advance these goals. The coalition is focused on getting greenways built and engaging more people to understand greenways. We are advising on the greenway efforts across New York City, and we are also working to increase knowledge and use of greenways and build public awareness and participation in the upcoming greenway planning efforts. We want to build a constituency for greenways. This work takes time, and today's summit wouldn't be possible without our supporters. I'd like to thank our foundation supporters, the Altman Foundation, and the City Parks Foundation, New York City Green Fund, and the many funders of the Green Fund. Click to that slide. As well as our lead summit sponsors, AECOM and Equinor. We'd like to thank Emphasis Design, Andy Simons, and Helene Benedetti for all of our design materials for the summit. And our other summit sponsors who are here, Arcadis and Community Offshore Wind, and Bond Civil Construction and Utility. I'd also like to thank the Brooklyn Greenway Initiative board members who are here and who helped raise money for today and tomorrow, especially board member Wes Jacobs. And next, I'm very excited to introduce Andrew Kimball, the President and CEO of the Economic Development Corporation. For many years, Andrew has seen the benefit of a Greenway network as he was previously the CEO of the Brooklyn Navy Yard and Industry City, two job centers and retail destinations that New Yorkers commute to on the Brooklyn Waterfront Greenway. As mentioned, if you have any questions about Greenways for Andrew, please write them on your card and pass them to a volunteer. So Andrew, I think you're out in the hallway. Thank you for speaking today and for the work that you're doing to build out the Greenway network in New York City. And we're really excited to hear from you. You're right there. Thank you. Sorry. Let's tee up the PowerPoint and we can get started. You can come on up. Okay. You should be ready.
Great. Thank you so much, Hunter, for inviting me today and for your leadership. I've been really lucky to work with incredible leaders from BGI over 25 years, starting with Milton Puryear and Terry, and now you. And huge thanks to all those who are involved in the coalition, involved with TA. As somebody who's grown up in New York City, you have changed our lives and our trajectory for the better. My mother used to bike from Upper Manhattan to her job at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden every day in the 70s. That was kind of nuts. And my first paid job at 15 was as a bicycle messenger. So I have experienced the before, and you guys have all changed it remarkably for the better. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk about bike lanes, waterfront accessibility, in the context of economic development, because they are inextricably linked in my mind. First, just reminder, core mission for EDC, creating a vibrant, inclusive, and globally competitive economy for all New Yorkers. We have four main buckets of what we do. First is strengthening business confidence. So when the mayor came out with a jobs blueprint 6 months after he came into office, that was something EDC worked on, and that is showing enormous results. I'll talk about some of the data in a minute. The new New York plan that came out 6 months after that really said we need to think about our downtowns in a very different way. Post-COVID, the days of office only are over. Every neighborhood, whether it's Midtown or downtown or Broadway Junction or Jamaica and Queens or Morris Park in the Bronx, are going to be live, work, play in the future. And play, of course, includes access to green space and bikes. And that plan has led to enormous steps forward in terms of perhaps unlocking our greatest crisis of today, which is, frankly, housing. Jobs, we're doing very, very well. I'll talk more about that, but housing. And the plans that came out of the new New York, whether it was removing the 12 FAR cap or conversions from commercial to residential, or the rezonings that have already been approved, or the City of Yes plans. And I just encourage you as New Yorkers to look very closely at City of Yes, Housing for All. I believe it's one of the strongest pieces of public policy and zoning reform in our lifetimes, and it's going to come to the City Council in a few weeks, and we've got to get that done to make sure we build the 500,000 homes that we need in New York City. We focus on innovation sectors, from tech to life sciences to green economy, high wage, high growth sectors, and then create the pathways for all New Yorkers into those jobs, from DOE to CUNY, into those innovation sectors. We focus very much on building those neighborhoods where people live, work, and play, particularly around transportation hubs. And then we deliver sustainable infrastructure, over $9 billion of infrastructure, a lot of that going into greenways. This just gives a map showing that we are everywhere in New York, and also that New York is a harbor town that you all know, over 550 miles of waterfront. EDC is involved with almost 150 of those miles, so we have a real opportunity as we think about the future and we think about access to the waterfront. But just quickly on the state of the economy, there's a lot of noise out there in the papers every day. Our economy is crushing it right now. Not all New Yorkers are feeling it, and we got to work very hard on that to make sure we build the equitable economy that we all want. But we're at an all-time high for private sector jobs, all-time high for all jobs. We are growing jobs at a faster rate than any other city in the country right now. And our region is the 10th largest economy in the world. We have a record high labor force participation rate, highest rate since 1976 when they first started tracking this. These are people employed or people looking for work. That is a very good sign that we have an economy that is working. People want to get back into it. We have had terrible inequities in our unemployment rate. We've been working very hard on that, particularly amongst Black New Yorkers. That unemployment rate has come down 30% in the last year, so we are making progress. We have a long way to go, though, and we're aware of it. The other sign that really heartens me about the future of the city's economy is 1 in 8 in all businesses have been created in the last 12 months. That speaks to the entrepreneurial small business background and backbone of New York City's economy, and I was lucky enough through some of those projects that Hunter mentioned to play a role. And when you map out where those small businesses are popping up across the city, you see a heavy density of those dots up and down the Brooklyn-Queens waterfront, but thankfully now starting to come back to Midtown and downtown as people start to come back to work more. So pivoting to greenways and economic development. First of all, this is very much a collaborative effort. I want to give a big shout out to Lena Ferguson and Alexis Taylor on our team, but their colleagues at Parks and DOT. Generally, we're on the waterfront piece of this assignment. DOT's got all the streets, Parks has got the parks, but we've got to be interconnected. And one of the things that I really appreciate about this administration is the way that we work together collaboratively, and that tone is frankly set at the City Hall level. There's an expectation that we work together and not against each other, and we are making tremendous progress. Why do we care about these things from an economic development point of view? Bikes are obviously key in creating new travel corridors. They're key to our health. They're key to getting access to the waterfront and to parks, and they're key to our resiliency long term. There was an incredible stat, I can't remember exactly what it was, but post-COVID, or during COVID, at the height of COVID, people were buying a bike every 6 seconds in New York City. Anybody remember that stat? Something like that, just astonishing. We need to continue to encourage that and the use of bikes in all ways. So some of the big projects that we're involved in, obviously East Midtown Greenway has gotten a lot of attention, this really being the first bike and pedestrian lane out in a waterway anywhere that I have seen. Certainly it is astonishing driving up and down the FDR and looking over water out at a bike and pedestrian lane. This is a very expensive undertaking, this project, but we think this kind of initiative can have dramatic impacts. It's obviously critical to us finally finishing the entire loop around Manhattan. We are in very early design stages for the UN Esplanade and other components of the system. Just looking back since 2008, we've completed over 10 projects totaling about 8 miles. And these are some of those sites. And then we've got another 10 projects or so totaling $1.6 billion, adding another 8 miles. That is really dwarfed, though, by the incredible work that our colleagues at DOT and Parks are doing everywhere. And obviously, through the RAISE grant, we are partnering with them to make sure that this network is broadened even further and that we are reaching every neighborhood in an equitable way to make sure that bikes are heavily used. So bear with me for a minute. I'm going to take you on a little historical journey and then a flyover of New York Harbor. So New York's harbor has always been critical to how the city has functioned in every way, but particularly in terms of our economy. It was true for the Algonquin, the Lenape, the Dutch, and the founding of New York City as a city was really about its harbors. Obviously, the harbor was the beacon of hope for so many millions of immigrants that came here in the 1800s. Really from 1850 to 1950, our waterways and our waterfront was at the epicenter of shipping and manufacturing in the United States. Over 1 million manufacturing jobs, a lot of this driven by the critical role we played in World War I and World War II, and you see that at the Navy Yard and Brooklyn Army Terminal. But for those of you who remember the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it wasn't so great. These pictures were commonplace. They were everywhere. We really turned our backs on the waterfront. That really started to change in the 1990s, really around green space and housing, getting people back to the water. Obviously, Brooklyn Bridge Park is a dramatic example of that. You see it before and after here. But then housing projects like Hunters Point West, a critical project on a former industrial site Took many, many years to get done, but is now a great example of urban regeneration. We also re-embraced the waterfront in terms of water taxi service. EDC actually runs the water taxis. We're very proud of that, NYC Ferry. But there was very little embrace of the waterfront for jobs, with a few key exceptions, and obviously the Brooklyn Navy Yard was one of those. This is the new lab space, the before and after this space, and the rest of the Navy Yard really becoming an international model for advanced manufacturing and adaptive reuse of old industrial sites. We think we can do versions of this and other job-generating projects across the entire harbor while simultaneously dramatically reducing truck traffic on our streets. And that started with the mayor rolling out his vision for the harbor of the future at his State of the City. This was the press conference announcing we had just acquired the Brooklyn Marine Terminal. This is in Red Hook, also known as the Red Hook Piers. You know those cranes. An underinvested in site controlled by the Port Authority for 50 years. Just wasn't important to them. Their core mission is international cargo. 98% of that goes into New Jersey and gets on trucks and comes back into our streets. Not their priority. The land wasn't there, the rail wasn't there in Brooklyn. We think we can reimagine this site, though, as a modern port for something that is core mission for the mayor, core mission for DOT, EDC, which is getting trucks off the street, making this an all-electric port, focused on Blue Highway, and then last mile delivery on e-cargo bike. We also think that on 122 acres, you can do more than just maritime. And so we're going to be going through a master planning process. There's actually a big announcement today about this with a task force made up of community representation, led by Congressman Dan Goldman and co-chaired by Senator Gennardis and Councilmember Aviles, with the goal of coming out with a master plan by the end of the year, and then moving very quickly through an approvals process. This was part of a swap of two ports, where the Port Authority gets land ownership, full control at Howland Hook and Staten Island, much closer to their assets in New Jersey, unlocks private investment there by them having long-term control, us getting control of the Brooklyn Marine Terminal. I am very proud of this deal. We've got a long way to go to come up with that mission, that vision, that everybody can buy into. But this, as I said, was a project that 4 mayors in a row have tried to get done, and we are moving on it. Other really exciting things on the water include this groundbreaking for the 75-acre offshore wind port just next to Industry City in South Brooklyn. What's great about this shot is it just shows how difficult and coordinated you need to get big projects done. This includes representatives of the city, the federal government, the state, NYSERDA, environmental justice communities, and the private sector through Equinor, one of your sponsors today, investing massively in this site, which will be transformative as we drive towards a green economy. So now we're going to take a little flight over the harbor and talk about some of our projects and how that's connected to green space and bike lanes. It starts on the North Shore of Staten Island, where this administration is delivering on a lot of long overdue promises and new projects through $400 million of investment for a 20-acre green space running from Stapleton up through the North Shore. This is part of a longer-term vision for a bridge-to-bridge connection, which I know that DOT feels strongly about, as do we, to get more folks in Staten Island onto bikes and access to their waterfront, and also for visitors to come to this part of the city and experience the outdoor space, maybe spend some money and support the local economy. Like Brooklyn Bridge Park and like Hudson River Park, Staten Island deserves something like this, and it will unlock enormous upland investment in housing and commercial space from the private sector. We loop back over to South Brooklyn. This is exciting for me, having spent a lot of time on the Brooklyn waterfront. EDC controls over 200 acres of space on the South Brooklyn waterfront. The jewel in this crown is the Climate Innovation Hub at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. This is a $100 million initiative where we invited proposals for what will become an incubator, accelerator, R&D piloting center with critical workforce development components for the community. And we just got those bids in. We're very happy with what we received, and we hope by the end of the year to be announcing something. This is part of the mayor's Green Economy Action Plan. So as you all know, multiple mayors have had Plan NYC, really strong public policy plans about how to address climate change, but not a jobs and economic plan. And there is billions and billions and billions of economic development opportunity around the green economy. We need more places beyond the Navy Yard that can incubate, accelerate these green economy businesses that are going to change the city. There are over 21 different sectors identified, 63 initiatives. Our colleagues at Mach-EJ, Elijah Hutchinson, and so many others very involved in putting together this plan. A little bit farther north from the Brooklyn Army Terminal is the Bush Terminal. This has been kind of a dumping ground for decades. We are reinvesting. We're going to open up the first 250,000 square foot beautiful red brick building focused on light manufacturing right across from what will be a 6-acre new open space. That's just the beginning of over 1 million square feet of new space we'll bring online there. A little bit north of that is the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal. This is a rendering. It is super exciting. If you drive by on the BQE, or you better bike by, you see all of the cranes and economic activity happening there. Hundreds of millions of dollars of investment by Equinor, coupled with some very significant city capital investments. Over 1,000 jobs can be created on this site. They will stage the component parts for the offshore wind industry that then get floated 15 to 30 miles offshore, connected by a cable back into this site, powering over 500,000 homes with green energy. It will be one of the most visible physical manifestations of the green economy for years to come in New York. You go a little bit farther north, and you have the amazing initiative going on Governor's Island, the climate exchange there, in partnership with the folks who run Governor's Island, with a number of schools, including Georgia Tech, SUNY, Stony Brook, Oxford. This is more about research and development, about future product coming down the line around green construction. This will be one of the biggest mass timber constructions in the city. A very important partner to what we're doing at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. You go farther north of that, you get to the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Under tremendously strong leadership, once again, with a master plan to double the physical space there over the next 10 years. Again, going back to interagency collaboration under this administration, we have now bound these three sites and initiatives through something called the Harbor Climate Collaborative. Collectively, we're talking about 600 acres of space, 10 million square feet of space, for spaces that were designed and first built out to fight the existential challenge of World War I and World War II, now are addressing the existential crisis of today, which is climate change. All of these sites, I should just note, have important bike and greenway components to them. Hunter mentioned the greenway around the Brooklyn Navy Yard. I remember everybody saying, whoa, we can't integrate like trucks and industrial with bikes. One of the most successful bike lanes in the city. We got a chance to work on the amazing park there that the Greenway put in place using federal dollars. Around our Sunset Park assets, there are DOT planned bike lanes that will come around Hamilton Avenue, down 29th along the waterfront, getting you closer to the Verrazzano, and obviously the 4th Avenue bike lane, in my opinion, is a fabulously important project for the city. This just gives an outline of the Brooklyn Marine Terminal. Going back to that, it shows the expanse of this site, 122 acres from Atlantic Avenue to deep into Red Hook. Again, we think we can make this a modern, all-electric port focused on moving goods by water as much as possible. I'll give you one example today. There is a very small maritime operation in there today. A lot of the specialized cargo that comes in is in frozen reefers, food, goods. They come in there, they get off the ship, they then get on a barge, they float back to New Jersey, they get in cold storage, they get on a truck, they go to the Bronx. That doesn't make a lot of sense. That is just one small example. If we can crack the nut on this blue highway have those same goods come into Brooklyn, get on a barge, float directly up to Hunts Point, get processed, get staged, hopefully go out by water from Hunts Point to locations across the city, we will have had a dramatic impact on the city and improved, by the way, the bike and pedestrian experience everywhere by getting trucks off the road. You swing over to Lower Manhattan, this gives another great example of where these things come together. This is the downtown Manhattan heliport. We're converting this into an all-electric heliport, the first in the country. This is a demo in the upper right-hand corner. There are probably not a lot of people in the room who love the noise of a helicopter going over their head. These things are incredible. You barely hear them. They are all electric, and we did the first demo in a dense urban area, which is the picture you see. They flew between Governor's Island, Brooklyn Bridge, and the downtown Manhattan heliport. They said they were just going to go around twice. They went on for 20 minutes. I think I was holding my breath the whole time, but they did land. And the FAA is going to improve the use of these things within 12 to 24 months. So we are very excited about implementing here, but it's not the only thing we're going to do at the downtown Manhattan heliport. Because it's on the water, we're going to use it as part of our Blue Highway strategy, bring in fast ferries, not with people, but e-cargo bikes, again, for that last mile delivery to get trucks off of the road. A little bit south of that is our Lower Manhattan Coastal Resiliency Project and the Fidei Seaport, going from Pier 17 all the way through the Battery Maritime building. This is a massive project. We're about 15% into design, so we have a long way to go. We do not have the capital funding for this project. It's probably an $8 to $10 billion project, but critical that we create resiliency with green space, with access for people and bikes. And if we don't, in 25 years, Water Street is going to be underwater. So we have to act. You go a little bit farther from that, again, another project on the water, a project that really speaks to the core values of this administration around economic development. So this is a 5-acre site. The old falling down Hunter Nursing School is on it today. The plan when we came into office was to convert it to a sanitation depot. We thought we could do better. Within 6 months, we had a commitment from the governor and the mayor for $500 million each to bring 3 CUNY schools to the site, a 2-year, a 4-year, and a graduate school, all focused on public health and biotech careers, with a STEM DOE school on half the campus, the other half of the campus for private biotech in a broader Kips Bay district, which is going to become, over time, our version of Kendall Square and really drive the life sciences in New York City. This is an opportunity to really implement a lot of our green vision around circular economy, adaptive reuse of materials that are demoed there, and it is just going to be a spectacular project. Just, you know, for those New Yorkers who have seen a lot of big projects, you appreciate how long these take. So let me tell you this timeline. This was announced in 2022. Within a year, we had a master plan. We're going to get through ULURP in February. We're going to break ground on the public buildings next summer and put out an RFP for the private space. Incredibly fast, and shows the kind of speed that this administration can get things done on economic development. You go a little bit farther north, and you see the density coming up the Brooklyn-Queens waterfront, but then you see a lack of density once you get just south of the Queensbridge houses. This is an area that past administrations have tried to rezone unsuccessfully multiple times near Long Island City. We are not afraid of a challenge. We're going at this again, going through a community process, very much in concert with the local council member, and we hope we can bring more waterfront access, more bike access, more residential, and really spur industrial growth in the IBZ right next door to that. Across the, basically a jump across, halfway across the FDR, is Cornell Tech. This project was critical to bringing tech jobs to the city. There were very few tech jobs in 2008. There are 350,000 today. Cornell Tech is looking to expand on the island. We're working very closely with them on that initiative. And then we come back to Greenways and how this is connected. So we're at the East Midtown Greenway here. We just talked about it. The UN Esplanade will be just to the south. You go a little bit farther north, you get to another one of our Greenway projects. It will go into construction early next year, the Bobby Wagner Walk. This covers a little bit over a mile. And as I showed on the earlier diagram, that will continue up and around Inwood. We're going to swing over to Flushing. We're going to pass over LaGuardia. I see a few planes taking off and landing. And you get to Willets Point. You know, this was a dumping ground under Robert Moses, 100 rail cars showing up every day with ash heap. That was stopped during the World's Fair, but then the city decided at the time to make it chop shop land, and so you had another layer of environmental degradation over that. The cleanup there did start multiple administrations ago. Under de Blasio, there was a plan to put 1,100 units of housing there. It's a great plan. We thought we could do better. We've upsized that to 2,500 units of housing, the largest 100% affordable housing project in the city's history. And we thought we could do even more to capitalize on the fact that you have this density of sport and entertainment facilities from USTA to Citi Field. And we struck a deal with NYCFC to build the first privately financed sports stadium in the city, for the first soccer stadium for the world sport in New York City, in the world's borough, really, where more languages are spoken. And thirdly, an all-electric stadium, the first of its kind in the city, and that is going to break ground between now and the end of the year. We swing over to the South Bronx, another critical asset for EDC, and critical to our city's food resiliency. This is the Hunts Point Food Distribution Center, about 300 acres. A big chunk of that is the food produce center. 25% of everything we eat comes out of the food produce, 50% when you combine it with the meat and fish co-ops there. These buildings are 60s and 70s eras. They are not environmentally sound. There are 1,000 trucks that idle on fossil fuel generators all day long outside the produce center. We are putting all of that on electric generators, taking it off of fossil fuels. We have a $650 million project that we'll be hopefully breaking ground on next year to create an all-electric food produce distribution hub. So just to zoom out a little bit again above the city and talk about blue highways and the impact that this long-term vision can have. We have a number of potential micromobility sites. The Brooklyn Marine Terminal is one of these key blue dots. Then you layer on top of that all of our ferry landings that we can also use for moving goods on e-cargo bikes, not just people. And then you look at what the current distribution of goods is in the city. It all comes from Bayonne, Port of Newark, Elizabeth. Some gets on rail, goes up to Albany, comes down the other side, but the vast majority gets on trucks, and it goes over the Verrazzano, it goes over the GW, and then it's dispersed throughout our city. This is bad for our economy, it's bad for our health, it's bad for bike safety. We need to change it, and that's what this plan is all about. And this is what we want to see in the future. Goods moving primarily by barge and fast boat out of New Jersey. We're not going to end the container terminals there. There's billions and billions of dollars of infrastructure, but we can move the goods differently in the future and get them to their destination much faster. And yellow is at full build out our Harbor of the Future projected sites. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much.
Questions, just hold up your note card and pull them up. So I'm glad you ended on Blue Highway. I have a question about that. How do you see the Blue Highway program and its emphasis on micromobility? How do you see that being sort of implemented from an infrastructure standpoint? If there's more commercial use of greenways and bike infrastructure, what does that look like?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Appreciate that. And again, like so many other things, this is a great collaboration between EDC and DOT. Part of the reason that we think this is the moment is that the economics around moving goods are finally getting to that point where the Prologises, the UPSs, the FedExes are thinking, maybe it doesn't make so much sense to get our trucks stuck on bridges, to pay tolls, get stuck on streets, get tickets. We should be looking seriously at this Blue Highway piece. We did a joint request for expressions of interest with DOT. We got back a lot of great ideas and interest. DOT is primarily taking the lead on the road infrastructure and making sure that bike lanes and greenways are appropriately outfitted to handle e-cargo bikes in the future and to execute on that last mile. This is a long-range vision. You got to have something you're shooting for, but that is something that we are actively in conversations with DOT on. They also have very good thinking about smaller micromobility hubs where larger all-electric trucks could, have a space in a small building where goods are transitioned from trucks to e-cargo bikes for that last mile. But it's a great question. We got to make sure that the street infrastructure is there to be ready when this starts to happen.
Okay, thanks. All right, our next question is, please talk about how planning for greenways includes allocating space for on-water access for human-powered boats, i.e. community boathouses, kayaks, rowing shells can be stored.
Well, I love the question because when I was at the Navy Yard, I did a lot of work with the Harbor School and with Rob Buchanan and his rowing initiative. There is a need for these kinds of initiatives. We're actually talking to them about the use at Bush Terminal. There are some kayaking clubs that use the Staten Island waterfront that we're in conversations with right now as we break ground on 12 acres, the first phase of the Greenway there. So look, access to the water is not just a good thing for New Yorkers, a healthy thing. It is good for the economy. So we view this as in a much broader strategy, and getting people out on the water, experiencing the water, whether it's on NYC ferry or a kayak, is all part of that.
Why do EDC projects look so different, amenities especially, than other green spaces?
I'm not sure I get that exactly. I think that we do a lot of capital projects that could be done by other city agencies because we're not a city agency and we can procure differently. Sometimes that means a little faster execution. But typically, the projects that I've seen our city agencies execute on are of a very high quality, as are EDCs.
You up for a few more questions?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, great. Please speak, there have been a few questions about ferries. Please speak about the decision process for ferry stops. Everybody wants them.
Yeah, thank you for that. Tough one, third rail. Look, we are really excited about how excited New Yorkers are about ferries. When I got to EDC, I was told by multiple people, like, this is going to be the yoke around your neck that will bring you down, partly because costs had soared. The per passenger subsidy coming out of COVID was $13 a passenger. That's a very high per passenger subsidy. All mass transit is subsidized, but that is high. And so part of our strategy has been getting it back on sound financial ground. We've driven down that per passenger subsidy to $8 while improving service at the same time. We have kept fares very low for New Yorkers who need access to lower fares. This is an equitability issue, but for those who are one-time users, you can pay more. There has been a lot of interest in expansion. We've got to balance that with financial sustainability, and that's going to be a conversation that is going to be percolating a lot in the coming months and years.
For future greenways, do you envision physical separation of e-bikes and human-powered bikes?
This is not an area in which I am an expert, other than my own experience biking a lot in New York, which I do. I would say, a few years ago, it was a little shocking, the speed of the for-hire delivery bikes. I think that has started to come under control. I think the fact that the e-bikes that you get through City Bike are so widely used, I think people who are not using electric bikes are getting more comfortable with this new reality. So for me, it has not presented a lot of issues personally as a heavy bike lane user, but I get it that this is an important safety issue, and again, this is really the policy wheelhouse of DOT.
Yeah, thank you. So there is a lot of interest, a big stack of questions. We won't have time to get through all of these, but are you okay with two more?
Cool.
And then we'll share these with Lena and Alexis and the team at EDC obviously there's a lot of interest here. Oh, even more. Okay, got it. Okay, great. So let's see, just lost my place. East Midtown is really a gold standard for waterfront greenways. How do we get more of those, more like those in other boroughs?
Yeah, I hear you. It is extraordinary. It is extraordinarily expensive, and capital costs just keep going up. So we are, currently tackling this as we think about design and engineering around the UN Esplanade. There is obviously real interest for outboard, bike, and pedestrian lanes elsewhere, both in Manhattan and around the city. I don't think we have come to as a city, a sort of policy framework for that, frankly. A lot of this is going to be driven by budget and access to capital dollars. And my short answer to that is we need to build the strongest possible economy in New York City so that our ability to borrow funds on big capital projects remains strong going into the future.
Great. Okay, last question. And then we'll tee up our city team to get even more detailed on what Andrew was just speaking about. This is a good one. What do you wish lawmakers would get right about EDC projects? More lawmakers to qualify that.
I don't have a great answer there. I think that, we have, not being a city agency, we have a lot of flexibility around what we do. Our revenues come from the assets that we manage, 60 million square feet of space, about 20 million of that we actively manage. I think that elected officials have rightly put pressure on us to make sure that those communities, whether it's Sunset Park or Hunts Point, just to use two examples, we are doing everything we can around workforce development for the surrounding communities, around physical improvements. So a big part of our Hunts Point Forward plan was streetscapes and adding bike lanes and park improvements, again, in partnership with Parks and DOT. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much.
All right.
And
thank you.
If you can stick around, we'd love to have you stay for the rest of the summit. We know that Alexis and Lena and others from EDC will be here.
Much more talented
and
people
we'll
left.
pass along the rest of the questions. Thank you very much.
Okay.